Ethan had always believed that love, when nurtured with patience and trust, could withstand any storm. For 4 years, he and Ava had been inseparable. Their relationship had blossomed from late-night study sessions in college to whispered promises of a shared future. When he finally slipped a modest ring onto her finger, Ethan thought he was the luckiest man alive. They had already started planning their wedding, dreaming of a life built on devotion rather than wealth, but reality, as it often does, struck with cruel force. Ava's mother, who had never approved of Ethan's humble background, suddenly raised her demands. She insisted that if Ethan wanted to marry her daughter, he had to contribute an additional $300,000 toward a new house. To her, love was meaningless without financial security, and she made it clear that a poor man could never give Ava the life she deserved. The timing could not have been worse. Just days later, Ethan's world collapsed when his mother was struck in a tragic accident. She was rushed to the hospital, her condition critical, the doctors urging immediate surgery. The cost was astronomical, but Ethan didn't hesitate. He turned to the savings he and Ava had carefully set aside for their wedding, believing she would understand when he told her. However, the woman he loved transformed before his eyes. Ava's face hardened, her eyes flashing with fury. Instead of compassion, there was coldness. She accused him of betraying their future, of choosing his family over her. In a fit of rage, she ripped the bank card from his hand and hurled it back at him, her words cutting deeper than any blade. "If you can't even give me stability, what do you have to offer?" Those words haunted Ethan as his mother took her final breath. He had lost the woman who raised him, and in the same breath, the woman he thought he would marry. Ava didn't stay to comfort him. She didn't stand by his side during his darkest days. Instead, she walked away, slipping seamlessly into the glittering world of Liam Sterling, a rising actor with wealth, fame, and everything Ethan could not give. That night, Ethan realized love was not always stronger than ambition. And sometimes, the person you trust most can be the one to shatter you completely. Years passed, yet the scars of betrayal remained etched in Ethan's heart. He had rebuilt his life brick by brick, learning to carry loss with quiet strength. Success had come in unexpected ways, and though he rarely spoke of it, Ethan had risen far from the broken man Ava had left behind. It was at Greg's wedding, his closest friend from university, that fate chose to reopen old wounds. The hall shimmered with golden lights and laughter, a celebration of love. Ethan walked in with quiet dignity, wearing a tailored suit that spoke of understated success. He had not expected to see her again, not here, not now. A hush rippled through the crowd when Ava arrived. Cameras flashed, eyes widened. She was no longer the ambitious girl he had once held close, she was Ava Sterling now, an A-list actress draped in elegance, the winner of 2 Golden Globes, a woman worshipped by the world. Her presence consumed the room, and yet, for Ethan, it only reignited memories he had long buried. Old friends, emboldened by alcohol, began to tease. "Look at you, Ethan," one of them smirked, clapping him on the back. "Remember how you used to follow Ava around like a fanboy? Guess dreams don't always come true, huh?" Laughter erupted, careless and cruel. Ethan smiled faintly, but his eyes did not waver. He had learned long ago that dignity was the sharpest armor. When Ava approached, her gaze lingered on him with an intensity that unsettled even her polished facade. She expected hesitation, perhaps longing. But instead, Ethan's voice was calm, almost detached. "I'm married," he said simply, the words landing between them like a stone dropped in still water. For the first time that evening, Ava's poise faltered. The color drained from her cheeks as though the foundation of her world had cracked. "Married?" The word echoed in her mind, shattering the unspoken belief that Ethan would always be there, waiting. "You," she began, her voice softer than the music playing around them. "You're married?" Ethan nodded once, his expression unreadable. Around them, the celebration continued, laughter, champagne, the clinking of glasses, but for Ava, the room had narrowed to a single man, the one she had lost, and perhaps, the one she still loved. Back in their university days, Ethan had first noticed Ava not on a stage or under the spotlight, but in a moment of raw, painful vulnerability. One afternoon, on the campus courtyard, he witnessed Ava's mother berating her in front of dozens of students. The harshness of her words, the slap across Ava's face, left everyone stunned into silence. Most averted their eyes, whispering behind cupped hands. But Ethan couldn't look away. He saw not just the humiliation, but the loneliness in her trembling figure. That was the beginning. When he approached her later, Ava was cold, her walls firmly in place. She brushed off his concern with cutting remarks, pretending his kindness meant nothing. Yet, beneath that frost, Ethan sensed a longing for someone, anyone, who might stand beside her. Slowly, he began to prove himself in small ways, sharing notes after class, offering coffee during late study nights, showing up at her rehearsals when no one else did. It was in the drama department's performance class that their bond truly took root. Ava, though talented, often buckled under the pressure of her mother's expectations. Ethan, with no stage experience, volunteered as her practice partner. He fumbled lines, stumbled across the stage, and made a fool of himself, but he made her laugh. And when she faltered, he was always there with words of encouragement. "You're brilliant, Ava. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise." Over time, her icy demeanor began to thaw. She would leave an extra sandwich for him at lunch, quietly slip a scarf around his neck in the winter, or wait for him outside the library just to walk together under the dim campus lights. She never admitted these gestures out loud, but Ethan cherished them all the same. Love, fragile yet undeniable, grew between them. It wasn't grand gestures or lavish gifts, but the quiet certainty that they belonged to each other. Still, Ava's mother never approved. She saw Ethan as nothing more than a burden, a poor boy with no future. Her disapproval was sharp, often voiced with scornful warnings. "Ava, he'll drag you down. You deserve a man who can give you the world." Ethan heard those words, but he never let them break him. He believed their love was stronger than circumstance. Ava, in those days, seemed to believe it too. The wedding reached its peak when the bride, radiant in white, turned her back to the crowd and tossed her bouquet high into the air. Laughter and shouts filled the hall as hands shot upward, eager to catch the delicate bundle of roses and lilies. The bouquet arced through the golden light and, as if guided by fate, landed perfectly in Ava's grasp. Gasps and cheers erupted, guests clapping in delight, but Ava was not smiling at her fortune. Instead, she stood frozen, her fingers tightening around the flowers as her gaze drifted across the crowd, straight to Ethan. The symbolism was clear to everyone watching. For a moment, time seemed to stop, the music fading into silence as their eyes locked. Ethan, however, looked away first, his expression unreadable. After the ceremony, while guests mingled and music swelled in celebration, Ava slipped through the crowd until she found him standing alone near the garden terrace, nursing a glass of champagne. She approached quietly, her heels clicking softly against the stone floor. "Ethan," she said, her voice gentle, almost hesitant. He turned, his face calm, offering no hint of the storm that must have brewed inside. She extended the bouquet toward him, her hands trembling ever so slightly. "I caught these for you," she whispered. "Do you know why I came tonight? It wasn't for the cameras, it was for you." Her words lingered in the cool evening air, fragile and dangerous. Ethan's lips parted, as if he might answer, but before he could, another voice intruded. "Darling, there you are." Liam Sterling appeared, perfectly poised in his tailored suit, his arm slipping around Ava's waist with practiced familiarity. His smile was polished for the world, but his eyes flickered with a subtle warning as they met Ethan's. The tension was immediate, sharp as glass. Ethan placed his glass down and straightened. Whatever emotion Ava's words had stirred, he buried it beneath a mask of composure. "Congratulations on the bouquet," he said simply, his tone polite yet distant. Without waiting for a reply, he turned and walked away, his silhouette vanishing into the crowd. Ava's fingers clenched tighter around the flowers, her heart pounding. She had found him again, only to watch him slip through her grasp once more. When Ethan returned home after Greg's wedding, his father asked questions he could not easily answer. The older man, worn by years of labor and loss, still carried the grief of Ethan's mother. He worried his son had never truly healed. To ease that worry, Ethan told a lie he had repeated so often it began to sound like truth: he was married. Her name was Chloe. What his father did not know was that Chloe had entered Ethan's life during his lowest moment. After Ava left and his mother passed, Liam Sterling used his influence to push Ethan out of the entertainment industry. Jobs dried up, contracts disappeared, and gossip painted him as a failure clinging to the past. Ethan had nearly given up when Chloe stepped in. She was his boss at the time, a sharp, confident woman who saw potential where others saw only ruin. Chloe offered him a position in her firm, then stood beside him when Liam tried to sabotage his career further. Unlike Ava, Chloe asked for nothing but honesty and hard work. She became the anchor he hadn't realized he needed. Their relationship was not born out of sudden passion but of respect and resilience. She encouraged him to rebuild, to chase the dreams he once thought impossible. Together, they laid the foundation for a management company in London, starting with only a handful of clients. Ethan poured his energy into the business, Chloe handled the negotiations, and within a few years their company was recognized as one of the most reliable in the industry. Success followed them across the ocean when they opened a branch in the United States. There, Ethan's name no longer carried the shadow of scandal but the weight of accomplishment. To the public eye, he was a man who had reinvented himself, leaving behind the scars of his past, and somewhere along the way, what had begun as a partnership of necessity deepened into something more. Nights spent drafting contracts turned into shared dinners. Quiet walks after exhausting days became moments of unspoken connection. Eventually, Ethan realized he no longer needed to lie to his father. Chloe was not just his boss, nor his savior, she was his wife, his equal, and the proof that from ruin, a stronger life could be built. It happened on an ordinary afternoon in Los Angeles, during the filming of a high-profile drama. Ethan had come to the set to finalize a contract for one of his clients when he overheard raised voices from the corner of the soundstage. A young extra, barely in her 20s, was being humiliated by a producer for a trivial mistake. The girl trembled, her eyes glistening with tears as the insults grew sharper. Ethan stepped forward without hesitation. His voice was calm but commanding. "That's enough," he said, his presence silencing the confrontation instantly. With quiet authority, he escorted the shaken actress aside, assuring her she would not lose her role. His composure and protective stance drew the attention of many on set, including Ava. From a distance, she watched him. The man standing before her was not the boy she had left behind. He carried himself differently now, confident, self-assured, his words carrying weight. And yet, when he bent down to comfort the trembling girl, Ava was struck by something achingly familiar. It was the same Ethan who once told her she was brilliant, who once promised that no matter how small he was, one day he would stand tall enough to manage her career. Later, when the crowd dispersed, Ava found him near the dressing rooms. "Ethan," she said softly, her eyes searching his. "Do you remember what you told me years ago? That one day you'd be my manager?" Her lips curved into a bittersweet smile. "You've become even more than that." He looked at her evenly, offering no warmth. "That was a long time ago." Undeterred, she tried again. She asked about his life, his work, his family. And then the truth fell from his lips like a stone: "I'm married." The words struck her harder than any rejection she had ever faced. Her composure cracked, tears welling in her eyes. She turned away briefly, but her voice trembled as she confessed, "I waited for you, Ethan. For 3 years after you left, I told myself you'd come back. That you still loved me. But you never did." When she finally looked at him, tears streaking her flawless makeup, Ava's face was no longer that of a glamorous star. She was simply the girl he once knew, broken, regretful, and still longing for the man she had lost. Ethan stood there, Ava's tearful confession still echoing in his ears, but his heart felt no stir of the old ache. Instead, memory rose up like a tide, merciless, vivid, impossible to silence. He remembered the day that had changed everything. His mother lay in the hospital, monitors beeping urgently, doctors pressing for immediate surgery. He had clutched Ava's hand, begging her to understand that he needed the money they had saved together. But instead of comfort, he received contempt. Ava's eyes had been cold, her voice sharp as glass. She had torn the bank card from his grip and hurled it back at him, saying words that carved into his soul: "If you can't give me stability, what do you have to offer?" The next time he saw her, she was on Liam Sterling's arm. The tabloids had splashed their photographs across every magazine cover, the rising starlet and the golden boy actor. They looked radiant, powerful, untouchable. And Ethan, alone, grieving, broke, had been left in the shadows. In those months, he fell into a darkness he never thought he could escape. Every rejection, every whisper behind his back, every reminder of what he had lost pushed him further down. He nearly drowned in despair. Then came Chloe. She entered his life quietly, without promises, without judgment. She found him at his lowest and refused to leave. Chloe offered him work when no one else would. She defended him when Liam used his influence to blacklist him further. She believed in him when he could not believe in himself. When she urged him to come to London, he hesitated. But Chloe's conviction was unshakable: "You're worth more than what they've reduced you to. Let's start over." And so he followed her, not out of hope, but out of exhaustion. London became his rebirth. Under Chloe's guidance, he rebuilt his career. The company they created together grew from nothing into a powerhouse, its reputation built on integrity and grit. Somewhere along the way, as he watched her fight for him and with him, affection turned to love. It was steady, unglamorous, but real, the kind of love that healed rather than destroyed. Now, as Ava wept before him, Ethan understood the truth with startling clarity: the past was a closed door. And behind it lay a love that had chosen ambition over him. Weeks after their encounter on set, Ava found a new way to reach him. Ethan had been invited to a popular industry podcast, a live-streamed show where producers, actors, and managers often debated trends and shared personal stories. To him, it was nothing more than a professional appearance, another chance to discuss the company's upcoming projects. But Ava had other plans. Midway through the broadcast, the host's phone buzzed with a surprise call. The name flashed across the screen: Ava Sterling. The audience erupted in excitement, and within seconds, her voice flowed through the speakers, sweet, deliberate, and far too familiar. "Ethan," she said, the corners of her words tinged with nostalgia, "I couldn't resist calling. You know what day it is, don't you? My birthday. Back then, you never forgot. You were always the first to wish me well." Her laugh was soft, almost pleading. "So, will you do it, just this once?" The studio went silent. All eyes turned to Ethan, waiting for his response. For a moment, he simply stared at the microphone, his jaw tight, his hands clasped together. Then, with a voice as steady as steel, he said, "Happy birthday, Ava. But don't expect anything more from me. Those days are gone." The rejection was public, undeniable. The host, sensing the tension, scrambled to change the subject, but the damage was done. Ava's voice faltered before the line cut abruptly, leaving behind a heavy silence. Later that evening, Chloe found him in his office, still brooding over the incident. She leaned against the doorway, arms crossed, her expression half amused, half concerned. "You handled that better than I would have," she said with her usual candor. "If it were me, I'd have hung up the moment I heard her voice." Ethan gave a faint, weary smile. "It wasn't easy." Chloe crossed the room, placing a hand on his shoulder. "She thrives on drama. You don't. That's why you built something real, and why she can't let go." Her words weren't meant to flatter, but they carried the kind of unwavering truth he had come to rely on. Unlike Ava, Chloe didn't need grand gestures or perfect timing. She loved him without condition, without demand. And in that moment, Ethan realized how stark the contrast truly was. One woman haunted his past, the other defined his future. The glittering lights of primetime television made Ava and Liam appear untouchable. On screen, they were the it couple, the perfect blend of beauty, power, and influence. Every episode of the reality show painted their relationship as passionate, playful, enviable. Paparazzi swarmed whenever they stepped outside, headlines calling them the golden pair of the industry. Ava smiled for the cameras, Liam played along, and the public ate it up. But behind the scenes, cracks widened. Liam was sharper than the tabloids ever gave him credit for. He noticed the way Ava's eyes softened whenever Ethan's name was mentioned, the way her laughter sounded hollow when interviewers compared Ethan's rising company to Liam's fading career. One evening, after a particularly exhausting shoot, Liam requested a private meeting with Ethan. They met at a discreet rooftop bar, far from flashing cameras. Liam's tone was uncharacteristically serious as he set down his glass. "Don't believe what you see on screen," Liam said flatly. "This perfect couple image, it's all scripted. Ava doesn't want me. She wants you. Always has." He gave a half smirk, bitter more than smug. "The show? It's just her way of keeping your attention, making you jealous." Ethan leaned back, eyes narrowing but calm. Once, such words would have shattered him. Once, he would have spiraled into anger, confusion, maybe even desperation. But now, his expression betrayed nothing but indifference. "She can want whatever she likes," Ethan replied evenly. "That doesn't mean I care." Liam studied him, almost impressed by his composure. Ethan wasn't the fragile dreamer from years past. He had become something else entirely, the head of the largest management company in the country. With one call, he could decide which careers soared and which crumbled. "You've changed," Liam muttered. Ethan's lips curved into a cool smile. "No. I've grown. That's what happens when you stop living in someone else's shadow." For a moment, silence stretched between them, the weight of unspoken truths pressing down. Liam realized the balance of power had shifted. The games, the shows, the schemes, they meant little against Ethan's quiet dominance. When Ethan finally rose to leave, his words lingered in the night air. "Tell Ava this, if she thinks I'll break again, she's mistaken. That boy is gone." And with that, he walked away, leaving Liam staring at the skyline, the illusion of control slipping through his fingers.